Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with the sixth and last film of this Boris Karloff collection. That is 1942's The Boogeyman Will Get You, with both Karloff and Peter Lorre, so that is great. So now that I've gone through this whole collection, if you're into older movies and Karloff especially, and this era of horror, this is definitely the Karloff collection to get. This is the best one I've ever seen. A lot of them that I've seen will have like 3 or 4 movies, and they usually have like the Fu Manchu stuff. But this does have a great collection of 6 really good Karloff films. Even the one I like the least is still really fairly good. So yeah, definitely pick up this 6-pack Karloff collection. Also stars Maxie Rosenbloom, also known as is it Slappy Maxie or Slapsy Maxie? He was a light heavyweight world champion back in the 30s. Directed by Lew Landers. Also stars Larry Parks and Miss Jeff Donnell. And this was the final film that Karloff made under his contract to Columbia, which all of these films are. These are all his Columbia films. I believe he did this directly after The Devil Commands. Even though that was 41, this is 42. Or it was Devil Commands directly after Before I Hang. I can't remember which one. But yeah, so he was under contract with Columbia, and this was his final film of that, thus leading a long string of films playing the mad scientist with good intentions. And the thing about this movie is it's also a comedy film. I know I've talked before about horror comedy and comedy horror. I would definitely say this is comedy horror. I would put this more in the realm of like an Abbott Costello type movie. It's not quite as silly, but there's still really silly moments. And you have different types of humor. Like, you have the screwball, kind of pratfall-y type humor. Like, there's one running gag where one of the steps going upstairs is busted, and the same guy keeps stepping through it. Or he's up on a ladder, and he moves wrong, and he falls, and he grabs onto the chandelier and swinging around. But there's also some I just got a text across my phone, and I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, there's some dialogue-driven jokes. Some of them landed. I don't really remember on top of my head what they were, because this is the first time I've ever seen this movie. The title doesn't really make sense, The Boogeyman Will Get You, because it really doesn't feel like... Well, okay. The plot of the film is Karloff plays this scientist, of course. Professor Nathaniel Billings. And he owns this 18th century tavern. And he decides to sell it to this lady played by Miss Jeff Donnell, so it can be turned into a hotel. Under the conditions, he can still keep the basement for his experiments. Also, the housemaiden can also stay, and the hired hand that works around the grounds can also stay. And then her ex-husband, played by Larry Parks, comes in. He decides to help, like, fix it up, get it ready. And he's the guy that all the humorous stuff keeps happening to. He's the one that, his foot goes through the floor, falls off the ladder. Part of it kind of reminded me of Faulty Towers with John Cleese, which I'm a huge fan of. This hotel where things keep going wrong. And then, but it is very different than that. Not nearly as funny. And then Peter Lorre, he plays a sheriff who's also a doctor. A Dr. Lawrence. Who, there's a dead body down in the cellar in Karloff's lab, and he shows it to him. Which, Karloff's whole experiment is he wants to create what he calls Superman, or Supermen. He wants to make these super soldiers to help the war effort. Lorre sees that could potentially be kind of lucrative, so he wants in. And from then on, it's just a bunch of silly mishaps. Like, one guy, played by Maxie Rosenbloom, the boxer, he's a powder puff salesman. And he's a huge dimwit, but he's a huge guy. So they want to do the experiment on him. And it's just like the scene where they're down in the cellar and they want to get him in the machine. You have to put him like in this machine, like up to here. Then they put this helmet on him, but he's ticklish on the head. So he laughs and he gets up. He's like, no, really. He's got this really deep voice. And he just kind of talks like a stereotypical Hollywood movie moron. Say, no, seriously, people are ticklish on their feet. I'm on the top of my head. Go ahead, try it. And Karloff and Lorre, literally, look at each other, look down at his feet, start tickling his foot. And they're like, he's right. So it's extremely silly. And then there was the part where they're like, well, go get some anesthetic. We'll use that. And then when he comes back, they try to get it. It's like a bottle of chloroform. They try to get him to smell it, but his sinuses are plugged up, kind of like how mine are right now. That's why I sound like this. He's like, well, here, you guys smell it. So that they smell it, they pass out. The ex-wife, ex-husband owners come down, ask what happened. He's like, well, I had them smell this. They smell it and they faint. They do keep finding dead bodies. These two officers who kind of like Last House on the Left officers, but obviously 30 years before. They get stopped by the military because Lorre calls in the murder. So by the time the cops finally get there, just I don't know. Just a bunch of silliness. And then at the end, it's like all this shit's happening. Like, you find out the bodies that were supposedly dead the whole time were just in suspended animation. This one dead body they found with a knife in its back. There's this weird guy with glasses who's like a historical... God, what are they called? You take something historical or something valuable to someone and then they tell you how accurate it is and how much it's worth. Guy's pissing me off now. It doesn't even say on here. Anyway. Come to find out, he was stabbed by the housemaiden, who is this elderly woman, who I swear to God should have been played by Una O'Connor. The a Minnie from Bride of Frankenstein. She was also in The Invisible Man, just because of how silly and nonsensical this character is. There's parts where she's, I guess, sleepwalking, and she's just doing like this chicken stuff, talking about like laying eggs. It just says really silly things, and I'm like, oh my God. I was surprised they didn't get Una O'Connor for that. And then at the end, the cops just decide to send everyone to the asylum because they're all goofballs. And I know this review's kind of been all over the place, but really, the movie keeps it together towards the end, and then it just has all this shit happening. Looking at some reviews, someone said a lot of nonsense with a certain amount of humor, but rather too long drawn out. He must mean specific scenes because the movie is only 67 minutes long. That quote was from the Monthly Bulletin. Screwball comedy with hearty laughs. So it received mixed reviews. But also, I guess they wanted to, Columbia wanted to do a film adaptation of the Broadway play Arsenic and Old Lace, but they couldn't do it, and also Karloff was in that play. This is funny too. Columbia also planned a publicity campaign to promote the film, polling film critics to compile a list of the top 10 best on-screen villains. And they thought that the duo of Karloff and Lorre in this film would have been on there. But it didn't. And the top three was Witch from Snow White, Wolf from Three Little Pigs, and the cat from Pinocchio. I don't remember the cat being a villain. I probably would have said the whale or the guy that keeps him in the cage, but anyway. The best part about this movie is the performances of Karloff and Lorre. Karloff, my favorite actor. I know before I've said he's my favorite horror actor, horror icon. And Robert De Niro has been my favorite actor for years. But I think I have to finally admit, Karloff is my favorite actor. I have yet to see anything with him in it that is bad. Or where even his performance is bad. Karloff is great in this. So is Peter Lorre. I know in the 60s with Roger Corman, they started doing a lot together. But at this time, this was 11 years after the film M by Fritz Lang, where Peter Lorre was just electrifying and magnificent. But Lorre and Karloff have great chemistry in this. They really work well together. Karloff isn't afraid to look like a total buffoon in this. Like, seriously, tickling a guy's foot and then just acting like he's right. There was one other scene where literally he's acting like a goofball, and I can't remember what it was. So yeah, definitely the most different of these 6 films. The comedy was a hit or miss for me. It did get a couple chuckles. but it's far from a bad movie. And it reminded me of Faulty Towers, which is always a plus. And I got to see Karloff and Lorre together when they were still sort of in their prime. Early 40s, still a great time for both of them. But, yeah, so finally got to this whole 6-film collection. And this was 1942's The Boogeyman Will Get You. I have a couple random videos I'm going to make today. Maybe on the last one I'll talk about like some marathons. All I know I have planned for marathons is the Classic Monsters box set that I've showed. So yeah, a couple random ones today. But yeah, The Boogeyman Will Get You, 1942. Thank you for watching.